Well, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to this February edition of the Jesus Central webinar. I'm Travis Guzzi, the Mission Engagement Facilitator for the Central Region of the Southeastern District, and it's great to have you joining us for this interview tonight. And tonight, we have a special guest. We have Becky Wade from Redeemer Lutheran Church in Richmond, Virginia. Becky, why don't you greet everybody here tonight?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get going, let me just share a little bit. We talk about this at the beginning of each one of these webinars. Jesus Central, these webinars are basically to help inspire, equip, empower, and resource you to join Jesus on his mission. That we have a call to love and serve our neighbors, to connect with them, and that in the process that Jesus works through us to make himself known. And that's really our goal here in the Southeastern District, is connect with our neighbors in order to connect them to Jesus, his promises, and his love. And so we do these interviews with missional thought leaders and practitioners to help be a resource to you as you think about your mission context. And perhaps that something in these webinars, these interviews that we do, is something that becomes inspirational for you and something that translates into your context. Well, tonight, Becky, let's get started. And why don't you share a little bit about who you are and your ministry there at Redeemer Lutheran?
Okay. Like you said, I'm Becky Wade. I am actually the coordinator for community engagement here at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Richmond, Virginia. I have been on staff for almost 2 years here. But the ministry that I am associated with has been in place here at Redeemer for about 8 years. And what we do is, we realize that the homes around us and the neighborhoods around us are primarily made up of middle class to lower middle class families that really don't identify as Christian or attend a church on a regular basis. When we look at our numbers, it says that about 50% do not attend church. However, this is self-proclamation, so we're assuming that the number is probably closer to 60 or 70%. So we're sitting right in the middle of this area. And about 8 years ago, we realized that our neighbors don't know us, we don't really know them, and furthermore, they don't really know each other. So, we started praying, and I say we like I was here. The team at the time started praying, and they got some plans into action, and we call it building a community-based church. So we have events that we hold, and we do things monthly, we do things quarterly. We have several events that are biannual. We have a couple of annual events that we hold, just with the express purpose of getting to know people and allowing people to get to know us and being the hands and feet of Jesus right here where we live and where we work.
That's exciting. So what is your role specifically there at Redeemer and all that you talked about?
Okay. I am the administrative coordinator. So basically, I put the events together. I work with an amazing leadership team. It's not about me at all. This is about Jesus and about what he's doing here. And the teams that we have are amazing. And the heart of the people here at Redeemer, it's incredible. They want to serve. So basically, I just work as kind of the ringmaster. I get the events together. I make sure that the volunteers are here. But for the most part, the teams and the leadership that are in place, they really run it all.
Excellent. Well, exciting to hear, and we're definitely going to dive in much deeper in all that you were kind of talking about there in the opening. But before you do, I always like to ask those that we interview on the Jesus Central webinar kind of a question. It's kind of a standard, but just to kind of sense to make sure that this isn't just about techniques, but really is a spiritual journey as we seek to love and serve our neighbors. So the question I like to ask is, what's Jesus been stirring in your heart lately?
So one of the big things is when I first came on this position, it was very much a jumping out of the boat and onto the water kind of thing. A huge change in my vocation for myself and for my family. And up to that point, mainly what we've been doing is event focused. So it's getting people on campus. And not even getting them on campus. It's meeting people where they are through a series of events. We do old-fashioned block parties once a month. We do movie nights once a month. We have a very large Easter event that we do. We have a large Halloween event. Again, events. So lately, what we've kind of done is we've kind of taken a step back, and we've said, we've really busied our calendar with events after events after events. And we've got neighbors that we're meeting every month, people that come to every event, again, that we hold, that we're rubbing shoulders with. But it's very much a hi, how are you kind of relationship. So what we're working on now, and what I've really been kind of wrestling with and praying about, is deepening those relationships. It's, how do you go from hello, my name is, or I'm glad to see you again, to let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about your life. Let's talk about being a light in the dark places of your life, and what that means and what that looks like. So it's out of the boat onto the water. It's uncharted territory, and it's something that I've really been wrestling with lately.
Yeah. It sounds like you've made some good connections in the community. Now, how do we actually have those spiritual conversations and really get into people's lives in a deeper way?
Right. And one of the big things is that, we're not trying to connect people to Redeemer. That's not really our goal in any of this. We want to connect people to Christ. We want people to see the love of Christ through us. Every time we're out in the neighborhood, every time we have a conversation, every time we send an email with somebody, we want them to see Christ through us in everything that we say and in everything that we do. And if that leads back to Redeemer, then that's awesome, because then we get to worship together, and we get to grow together in our faith, side by side, rubbing shoulders every week. But it goes back to Jesus. It's all about how can we connect people to Christ, and how can we let them see his love and his light through us.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's something I've been struggling with is a lot of times, especially when you have congregations that are struggling, have you decreasing membership, you have decreasing giving, and it's easy to say, well, we need to reach out. And unfortunately, that's a self-serving reaching out, because it's more about institutional survival rather than what you're talking about, connecting people to Jesus and his love.
Right. And, I think for me, I'm really blessed to be in a church that's thriving and growing. However, it's all about faith. If we're seeking to really fulfill the Great Commission, if we're really seeking to do what Jesus commanded us to do, he didn't just ask or suggest, he commanded us to go and do this and make disciples. Well, then he's going to bless our efforts. Our efforts are going to be blessed. We've just got to go into it with a pure heart. And, again, like you said, it's very easy to fall into that trap and that temptation, but it's making sure and searching your own heart and asking God to create a clean heart within you so that he can bless everything that you do.
That's exciting. Well, I really hear your passion for your ministry and what you're doing there at Redeemer. So one of the things, obviously what we do with Jesus Central is we're, looking at what's Jesus doing in and through the Central region, but it's also about the Southeastern District. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have this initiative called iNeighborhood, and it's about connecting with our neighbors in order to connect people to Jesus. How do you see that vision of iNeighborhood from a district level being lived out with your ministry there at Redeemer?
Well, so one of the things with iNeighborhood is what you call creating iDisciples, which are, it's basically training the people within your congregation to be the hands and feet of Christ, just coming alongside people that they meet on their daily life, people that they do life, they work with, they have coffee with. And that's what we're doing here. We're going out into the community, and we're sitting down at Starbucks and just having that conversation. We go out and we have these block parties. We're literally standing in a cul-de-sac where somebody lives, and we're shooting basketball with them, or we're sitting down and we're having a piece of pizza and just hanging out on a Saturday morning. It's all about coming alongside people and meeting them where they are. And not going at it with a judgmental spirit. You have to be transparent. It's about transparency.
Yeah. So talk about some of these ways that you're going out and being with people in the community. You talked about these community block parties. What is that?
Okay, so during the months that the weather is appropriate, obviously if it's freezing cold or above about 85 or 90 degrees, we're not gonna ask our volunteers or our neighbors to come out. But when it's nice, we plan once a month to go out into a cul-de-sac, and we ask permission from those that live there. We make sure that that's granted to us. And then about a week beforehand, we go out and we literally walk the street. We hand out flyers. We personally invite people, because you can do things on Facebook. You could do things on a number of different websites, but there's something about a personal invite that sometimes attracts people to come. So on Saturday morning, we get a group of volunteers and we load up and we go to whatever this given cul-de-sac is, and we serve lunch. And we play games and we do crafts and we just hang out with people and we talk to them. And what's really cool is a lot of times, not only do we not know our neighbors, but they don't know each other. And all of a sudden you see two people sitting down, they don't even realize they live 3 doors down from each other, but their kids go to school together. And these relationships start to grow and start to form. And we use a lot of bridge building illustrations here. And that's really building 2 bridges. It's building a bridge from the church to the community, but also the community within itself. And it all
I've been hearing
together.
that story more and more. I mean, we live in a very disconnected world, society, and to be able to be that bridge. I mean, not only you and them and Jesus, but even them to each other in their own communities.
Absolutely. And that's going to build a stronger sense of community. And that's going to create more opportunities. And it's a really neat thing to watch.
Yeah. What's kind of cool is when you come to your church, you see this trailer, and that's the trailer you take out for the block party.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a giant blue trailer with, and it says Redeemer Lutheran Church, and it says building a community-based church, and people see the trailer coming in. They know what's happening. Yeah. It's a kind of a party on the go, right? It is. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
That's cool. Well, besides the block party, what other open doors do you see for the gospel for your congregation in your immediate community? Because that's one of the things of iNeighborhood. It's equipping God's people to be everyday missionaries where they live, work, and play. But it's also about a congregation blessing its immediate neighborhood. And so many times you see these congregations where people drive in from other parts of a community, but it's not a ministry that's connected to its immediate neighborhood. So where do you see the open doors besides these block parties?
So one of the things that we've done, we realized that trying to recreate the wheel, you ask anybody, that's just an exercise in futility. So one of the things that we've done is we've created a relationship. We have 3 actual neighborhoods within the 2-mile radius of the church. So we have created relationships with the HOAs in those communities because the biggest piece of this is trust. So we've created relationships with those HOAs that are already in place, the leadership in those HOAs, and we're able to work through them and with them. If there's a fire in the neighborhood, we're able to be there and help in any way that we can. We've also come alongside the local elementary school, and we have a very good working relationship with the administration there. And once a month, they host a food bank distribution. And we have a group of people that goes from Redeemer every month to the elementary school. And, the principal of the school is actually there. She's there working with the food bank, helping to distribute food, and our volunteers are there. And so it creates this bond, and it's a strong relationship. And we found that to be a very, very, very good way to open a lot of doors that otherwise probably wouldn't open because, again, you don't have the trust factor.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's building those relationships of trust with kind of key influencers in these different communities around.
Absolutely. Right. Rather than try to just go in there as an outside force that no one knows and create, brand new bonds and relationships.
Awesome. That sounds great. Now you all have something coming up this weekend, right? Another way that you connect with your community? We do. Once a month, we have what's called Screen on the Green. And this started as, excuse me, for 6 months out of the year. We would serve dinner. We offer free dinner. And then we show a family-friendly movie. And it's projected out on the front of our church. The physical front of our church is just a white wall. And there's a lawn area. So people bring their lawn chairs and they sit and they're able to watch the movie and they have dinner. And we have a big tent that we actually put white twinkle lights around. And we have a popcorn machine.
We run a concession stand, and it's an outdoor movie night. And then about a year ago, we completed a building project, and now we have an indoor facility that can host this as well. So now we're able to do it 12 months out of the year. So Saturday night, because it's still going to be chilly, inside we have a portable movie screen, and we're going to show a movie, and we'll have dinner. And again, you have popcorn, candy, and people can bring their own blankets and lay in the floor. They can sit at the tables, and they just come, and it's a free family night. The parents don't have to worry about their kids seeing something they don't want them to be exposed to, but they don't have to worry about spending a little bit of extra money to do something with their kids.
Yeah. How long have you been doing those for now?
Those have been going on about 4 years now.
Okay. Wow. So, and it sounds like you've built some trust, because I mean, one of the things I hear, a couple of weeks ago, I was walking around a mall and I heard somebody, say that famous statement, well, if I walked into a church, the walls would come tumbling down. It sounds as if somehow, I mean, through this event and the building of relationships, you've built a level of trust where people feel comfortable, even if they're not part of your faith community, to come in and enjoy this.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, again, that's all the work of God. He is tearing down walls in ways that are not our own. There are people that come that some of the people have an affiliation with their own church, but the church is older, or there's nothing for their kids to do there. And so they come and they hang out with us. But what's interesting is a lot of times when those people have major life events, crisis, they come to us and they want to talk to us. It's a safe haven, because there's not that, what is my church going to think of me for having to go through this? Because this is a neutral place for them. But yes, we've been able to build some of those relationships and that trust. And going back to what I said initially, those are the relationships that we want to deepen. Those are the relationships with people that we see every month at these movie events, and various and other events that we hold, kind of one-offs, as we call them, that they show up for too. And it's a really big undertaking, but it's definitely something we want to do. That's
awesome. That's good. So, maybe to kind of deepen this a little bit and kind of bring in again that spiritual dimension to these outreach efforts that you've been doing as you love and serve your neighbors. What questions has this vision forced you to wrestle with as a ministry, and how's Jesus been answering those questions?
I think for me personally, one of the biggest questions is, how can I make sure that every day I am exactly who I say that I am? How do I keep from having my integrity questioned? Because it's not just the big things that you think about. We hear the stories of pastors of large churches, they come crumbling down from these large scandals. Well, those are the things that get national publicity. It's little things. Once people start to know who you are and they start to associate you with what you do, they're the people you see in the grocery store. They're the people you see in Target. And, I'm just like anybody else. If I go out shopping at Christmas time and it's really busy and somebody cuts in front of me in line, I'm not going to be real happy about it. But, just one moment of saying a word or losing my temper, that's gonna completely demolish my integrity. And it's interesting. Really, it's going to really cause people to question the ministry here, as if I'm the face, it's going to cause people to question Jesus.
Right. One of the things people think of, witnessing, that's something I go do, and they don't realize, no, you're a witness every day.
Right. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. The question is what are you witnessing to?
Absolutely.
And that's I think helping raise that awareness to realize that every moment is a witness opportunity, and we are witnessing either for good or bad. We are giving witness to Jesus. And what is the takeaway? What's the impression that people are going to have that if their introduction to Jesus, if I were the only person, what kind of picture would they get of him?
And it's interesting you'd say that, because just in my very limited experience, and my humble opinion, I would say that more people have had a bad experience with a Christian, and that's why they don't want to go to church. because I don't want to be one of them. I don't want to be a hypocrite. And I think that we as Christians do a lot of damage to the name of Jesus, possibly more so than those who just don't believe at all.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Excellent. So, where are the challenges as you seek to live out this vision, as you seek to connect with your immediate community in order to connect people of Jesus? What have been some of the challenges you guys have been experiencing?
Well, so, just speaking logistically, in the years that we've been doing this, we've actually only come up once when we went into a neighborhood and they basically didn't want us there. And we went to the HOA and they basically said, we don't need what you're giving us. And so, we wiped the dust off our feet and we said, okay, Lord, you know what, you handle this and we'll go back if you lead us there. But I think again, going back to what I was just saying, one of the biggest things is trust. It's taking the time, it's playing the long game, Travis. That's what we've got to do here. We're playing the long game, and it's having the patience to build that trust, to build those relationships, and to continue on a daily basis, some days on an hourly basis, to examine our own hearts and say, all right, Lord, where this is not pure, where this is not you in me, change it. And whatever that looks like, however that's going to feel for me, okay, I surrender, change it, change me so that I can be exactly what you need me to be as we carry out this mission.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like the part of the journey for you then is it's not just about going out, but it's the kind of wrestling inside of what does Jesus want to do in you? What needs to change in you in order to be that witness? And then the other part, and I love what you're saying, again, it's coming back to that trust that, I think the biggest struggle that we have is that so many times we treat sharing the faith and outreach as people are our projects. They're people that we've got to win.
Absolutely.
And if we go with that perspective, we live in a world that people can sniff out agendas so quickly today.
Yes.
And we're not going to win that hearing. It's going to take that trust that they know how much we actually care for them, that even if they never become a Christian, that we're going to be there, we're going to love them. And it's only then that they're going to care to hear what we have to share.
Well, and it's interesting you'd say that, because I say that all the time, and Pastor Matt Bean, who's our senior pastor here, he and I talk about that. They're people, they're not projects. Yep. And one of the things that I've really been learning lately, and it's been brought to my attention by someone that I would never have actually expected, is that, we're all made in the image of God. And we know that, anybody who has gone to church or reads about it, so yes, we're all made in the image of God. Well, if you take that a little bit further and you think about it, when you go at someone with a judgmental attitude, when you go at someone and you go at them, not to them, we've gotten really good at going, here, let me help you up, but not here, let me walk with you. There's a big difference there. There's a level of transparency and vulnerability, but when you think that, God made this person in his image as well. So that means there's something that I can learn. There's some part of God that I can see in them that I can't see in myself or in this person that I'm volunteering beside, or this person that I'm working beside. There's a part of God that I can see, some attribute of him that I can glean from my relationship with this person and my interaction. And I want that. You've got something to give to me just as much as I've got something to give to you. And it creates a humility of spirit. And again, it's not going, you know what? I want to get 50 new members to the church in the next 6 months from this. No, absolutely not. You're right. That's going to be like a neon sign over your head. But when you go at it and you go, you live 2 blocks from me. I'd like to get to know you, or not even 2 blocks. You live 2 doors down from me and I don't know anything about you. And I'd like to get to know you and see, where this can go.
Yeah. I think that that distinction you made, I mean, it's important that it's not ministry to, and it's not ministry for, but it's ministry with, because that
Absolutely.
2 and 4 is kind of puts us here and them there.
Right.
And it's making sure that, no, we're one of my favorite quotes is Luther said that, really sharing the faith is one beggar showing another beggar where to find bread. We are beggars. There's nothing that makes us a Christian.
Right.
And even as a pastor, I tell people, if you actually knew what was in my heart and mind, you couldn't believe I was a pastor. And the only reason I'm a pastor is because I'm a sinner who has been saved, and I know the love of Jesus. And when we come with that humility, that's when we walk with people and we build that trust. And then we're saying, hey, I found bread, the living bread of heaven, and let me share that bread too.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that comes from a constant examination of the heart. Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah. So what are the lessons that you all have learned as a ministry on this journey?
Well, I think we just touched on some of the big ones. You minister with, you don't minister to or for. You have to go at this with the right spirit. You have to go with the right heart. But on a more practical level, I think one of the big things is before you can start anything like this, you've got to take the time to find out who you're dealing with. You've got to know your demographic, because what works here in Richmond wouldn't work in Williamsburg. It certainly wouldn't work in Northern Virginia or in Maryland. So you've got to kind of know your neighbors enough to know where the needs are. And once you know them,
so it's not a cookie cutter kind of approach of if you just do this or here's the silver bullet, and
there's no silver bullet to this. No. We've done a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall, and some things have stuck and some didn't. You can't be afraid of failure. It's not failure. It's an opportunity to learn. And you go, you know what? We only had 3 people come to this. Okay, maybe this is not right, but we can learn. We can learn that it doesn't work, but perhaps there's pieces that we can take and we can put together with something else and make something new that might work, that might be a good thing.
So a question for you on that, because oftentimes when we do these kind of things, we always share all the great stuff that's working, but I always wondered, you that's like the TED Talk, you get up there and there's the expert who's like, knows everything. What if we had like the anti-TED Talk tonight? What didn't work that you learned some valuable lessons from?
Okay, so I guess about 6 months ago, one of our church members came to me and said, we've got all these wonderful events for families with small children. We've got all these wonderful events for young singles. We have nothing for people that are empty nesters, retirement age up. We want to figure out how to reach our senior community, because we did some research and we said, okay, there's a significant number here, and we've kind of forgotten about them, or we haven't gotten there yet, whatever you want to call it. So we said, okay, well, since our movie nights work so well, let's take that and let's shift that, and let's show a classic movie, and let's do it in the middle of the day on a Saturday, and let's serve lunch. Sounds like a great idea. We had 7 people show up. So, it was cool, because we found out, well, that obviously isn't something that's needed or wanted. But we found out some valuable lessons through that, also about communication and how we need to reach people in that demographic. And that, Facebook is a good tool, but, getting something in the mailbox is even better when you're talking about people, that you're trying to reach in that generation.
Yeah. Somebody one time said we are in that transition from the Gutenberg era to the Google era. And while a lot of people are in that Google area, there's still some folks who are in that Gutenberg. That paper and that invitation in that way is very important.
Right. So you got to kind of take a hybrid approach, because there are plenty of people that follow that demographic that use smartphones and use Facebook, and that's how they keep up with their children that are across the country. But there's still some that still want a piece of paper they can stick on the refrigerator, and that's very important. And you have to recognize that, and you have to give nod to that. And not only do you recognize it and give nod to it, but you adjust your plans to meet those people where they are, because again, that's what it's about. It's not telling you who to be so that we can minister to you. It's finding out who you are so that we can adjust who we are to meet your needs.
Yeah, that's such an important, and yet though sometimes can be a difficult lesson. I remember stories of early Lutheran missionaries who went to the American Indians, and they taught them English so that then they could teach them the Bible. And probably a more missional approach would have been for them to have learned their language in order to share the Bible in the language that was of their heart.
Right.
But so it's making sure, not trying to get people to be like us, but how do we, as Paul says, be all things to all people to win as many as possible.
Right. Absolutely. And that takes time.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
So we've talked about what you are doing as a ministry collectively. So how about for you personally, whether in your ministry role or just in your everyday life where you live, work, and play, how have you been living this vision of loving and serving your neighbors yourself?
Well, it's interesting you would ask that. So I am actually in a very unique position in that I live in the area that within the 2 miles of the church. I've lived here all my life. So these are actually my physical neighbors that I'm ministering to and I'm coming alongside of. And for me, it's been a very eye-opening experience because I realized that things aren't always what they seem, and there's a lot of darkness around me that I never noticed, that I didn't know about. I buried my head in the sand for a lot of years about it. And so on the one hand, that's difficult to swallow, especially, being kind of thrown into this role and never having been to seminary or, I'm not a DCSE or anything like that. But it's learning how to deal with that and learning how to separate myself, being in the world, but not being of the world. How do you keep that safe distance so that, again, I don't feed into or enable the problems or become part of them. But I'm there enough that I can personally be the light in the dark place.
So it's witnessing to the darkness as the light, but making sure that you don't enter into the darkness.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. What are some of the unique challenges in your immediate neighborhood? What kind of things have you been surprised to learn?
So one of the big things that we're finding out right now, when the economy crashed, this area took a pretty hard hit because you're looking at, again, lower middle class people, and a lot of them live paycheck to paycheck. So when the economy crashed, you were dealing with a group of people that all of a sudden didn't have money to put bread on the table. They weren't able to meet the daily bread needs of their families. So that's kind of where this whole thing started. We stepped in, and everything we do is free. So the meals are free, anything that we do is free. So in the last 2 to 3 years, though, we're finding that demographic has actually shifted. And now that, people are beginning to get back on their feet and they can pay their bills and they could put food on the table and put clothes on their children's backs. But it's the extra stuff. It's, I can buy school supplies for my kids and I can buy them new clothes for school. But this weekend, I don't have money to take them to the movies. I don't have money to go do this, that, and the other. So we're having to even not just shift, how we're going from events to deepening a relationship, but we're shifting the events so that we're focusing now not so much on making sure that we're giving people food every time we see them, or we're still offering the school supplies, we're still offering the meals. But last month we actually had a company come in that does Legos. And for 2 hours on Saturday morning, our entire fellowship hall was full of Legos. You probably couldn't have walked around without your shoes on without getting, severely injured on the bottom of your feet. But it was really cool. And we had almost 100 people here that came on Saturday morning just to play with Legos. And when I say play with Legos, I mean, they had robotics and they had race cars with ramps, and it was an experience that the kids wouldn't normally get just sitting at home building their Lego sets. But Legos are expensive. And, so this was one of those ways that we were able to say, here, come have an experience that might be a little bit more costly than what mom and dad can undertake right now, especially right after Christmas. But they're still in the door, and they're still here, and they're still connecting with one another, and they're still connecting with us. So I think the fact that the demographic has shifted has caused us to have to kind of shift the way that we're doing things and looking at things.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's one of the realities. I mean, a community, a neighborhood is never static. It is always changing. And sometimes you can miss the changes that are happening around you, or failing to engage in those changes. And then suddenly, you're looking around going, wait, when did everything change?
Right. And you become less effective, because again, you're trying to shove people into a box that you've created, instead of letting them be who they are, and meeting them where they are. Yeah,
I remember when I was at seminary in St. Louis, I guest preached at a church, and I think it was 40 people, mostly in their 70s and 80s, and they said there's nobody to reach out to, and yet you walk outside, there were people everywhere.
Right.
The problem was the community shifted to a different ethnic demographic, and it was a congregation that didn't know how to or wanted to adjust and connect to their community. And suddenly it changed so much that they became irrelevant. I mean, they were almost invisible to the community around them.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I'm hearing over and over again, and it's interesting, is just doing your daily life and being more in tune with who's around you. For instance, there's a Starbucks half a mile from here. And every Sunday morning before church, my family and I go to Starbucks, and we get our drinks, and we come here. I mean, all of us, my 2 children included. And we started going there. They didn't know us, obviously. Well, now on Sunday morning, they know that we're going to come in before church. And, that's opened the door that all of a sudden the barista, Jen knows that if I come in with the kids, she says, oh, where's your husband? Or if he comes in and gets drinks for everybody, oh, you guys are running late this morning. But it becomes a personal relationship. All of a sudden, she's not just a barista and we're just Starbucks customers. Now we have a relationship, and we're vested in each other to a certain extent. So it's a lot of just doing life and just being more in tune with what's going on around you. Don't have those blinders on.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's raising the awareness and having that kingdom perspective as you're living life, of seeing them as kingdom encounters. It sounds like it's the intentionality of being regular and being in people's lives so that those relationships can be built and that trust can be formed. And so it's making sure that you're doing those things on a regular basis. That sounds important.
Well, and it's interesting that you use the word intentionality, because there's an odd tension in all of this, because like we were saying earlier, it has to be organic. Yep. It has to be natural, because if it's forced, it's going to be as obvious as anything. However, there has to be intentionality. So there's this strange tension where you want it to be natural, but you also have to be intentional, and that's something that it's an odd juxtaposition, and you have to kind of learn to navigate that within yourself, and what that feels like to you, and what that looks like in each individual situation. Because again, not cookie cutters. Each absolutely. Individual relationship is different, and you have to figure out how to have that intentionality while still allowing things to be organic and naturally occurring.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. So what's a story? Again, not without, maybe change names or don't want to reveal anything, but what's a story you could share of somebody being touched for Christ by your congregation's neighborhood outreach?
So once a year, we do this program called Hearts of Service. And basically what we do is, first, let me back up and let me just say that our congregation is so service oriented. Our members love to roll up their sleeves and they love to help. It's not something that we ever have to ask more than once for. If we say, hey, there's a need, the people are going to show up. So once a year, we have what we call our Hearts of Service Day. And we find people within our community that have home repairs and things that they just can't do financially, physically, whatever the reason is. And a few years ago, we actually had a group go out to this lady's house, and she needed some repairs done on, I believe it was her front porch. And they went and they did this, and she actually called the church, and she said, I want to come and I want to thank those people for what they did. And she came and she met some people here, and she built relationships. And we didn't realize, obviously no one had any way of knowing, that 2 years later, her house would actually catch on fire. And when that fire occurred, she called Redeemer, and she called the people here, and she said, I need help. And I know that you guys are who I need. So that was kind of a cool full circle thing that we were able to witness. That's
awesome. So from those relationships, she knew she could contact you. You were a trusted entity in her life, and that's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. So we've talked about what you're doing collectively as a congregation to love and serve your immediate neighborhood. Talked a little bit about what you're doing, being with the church, but also living in that neighborhood. How are you at Redeemer equipping the members of the congregation to live out this vision personally, where they live, work, and play?
So that's actually something that's one of our next steps, is working on helping people learn how to do this and live this journey, really, that we're on. Find these people in their lives that these relationships just occur, and again, you don't really think about it, but adding that dimension of intentionality. When we go out into the cul-de-sac, we have our screen on the green events, we always meet beforehand and we pray. And we talk about, it's not about having all the right answers. It's not about having the answers at all. If you don't know the answer, admit it. Say, you know what? I have no idea how to answer your question, but there's somebody over there that does, and I'd like to know the answer too. So let's go together. And again, just by simply using that approach, you're going side by side with someone, and you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position, and you're allowing yourself to be transparent, and you're going side by side. So again, you're doing this, you're not doing this.
Yeah. And that humbleness, I mean, that's an authenticity. And, I don't think we have to try to pretend to be super Christian and, have all the answers and can leap over the Bible in a single bound. But it's being able to say, hey, I love Jesus and I love you. And boy, I don't know that, but hey, I can find out, or let me connect you.
Exactly. And being willing to say, I want to know too. Because someone else may ask that question again, or, it might be something in my life that I'm able to use in my own personal growth.
Awesome. That sounds great. So as you think about training people to love and serve your neighbor, what would be 2 or 3 things that are important for your members to learn? From what you've learned, what would help them in being in that training?
I think we've kind of touched on some of the big ones. The first one really is humility of spirit. Realizing that, like you said, these are people, they're not projects. And they have just as much to teach us as we have to teach them. And really going into it with that attitude. I think the second one would be to continue to make sure that you're maintaining that integrity every breath you take. Every cashier that you come in contact with, every waitress at every restaurant you go to, every barista at every Starbucks you go to, you have to continue to maintain your walk and be who you say that you are. On a practical level, I would say, again, make sure that the people that you're coming in contact with every day are not just slipping through your fingers. You're building relationships every day with people, whether you realize it or not. You've got to set your sights a little bit differently. Maybe change your paradigm a little bit and look at these relationships differently, because they're naturally occurring. They're already happening. It's not something that you got to go look for. I don't know of anybody that lives under a rock. We all come in contact with people on a daily basis. And usually, 9 times out of 10, you come in contact with the same people at least 2 or 3 times a week. Look at those relationships and be prepared to have those hard conversations with people.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's humility, integrity, and intentionality.
Absolutely.
Which Lutherans, we love to make acronyms, so you could just talk about the high approach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But with two eyes rather than one.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So what are you, either you personally or your ministry, what are you needing to trust God for in living out this neighborhood vision?
I think right now, like I said, in the beginning, it's we're getting out of this boat now, and we're trying to walk on water again. And we're very comfortable where we are. We're very comfortable with these events. We're very comfortable having the movie nights, going into the cul-de-sac, even doing these spontaneous one-offs like the Lego. It allows you to maintain a certain level of anonymity still. It's safe. I'm not risking much by showing a movie and, asking a volunteer to serve pizza. That's not risking much. But actually saying, you know what, I've seen you for 6 months and I speak to you every month. How about if next Saturday morning you let me buy you breakfast and we go and we sit down? Well, that's a whole different proposition. That's a whole different proposition for that person. And that's a whole different proposition for me as well, because I don't know how that conversation is going to go. I don't know the path that person's walked, and I don't know what kind of hurt and what kind of, of life they're going to put out on the table. And that life may not come out at that breakfast. That life may not come out for 6 months, but staying at that relationship, the odds are that something's going to happen. Things happen every day in our world, and someone's going to lose a job. Someone's going to experience a divorce. Someone's going to experience death. And just being that person that's there, so that when that happens, you're that support. And we run the same risk ourselves. Any of those things could happen to any of us as well. And being ready to say, yeah, this happens. And man, it's tough right now. And, it's hard to get up in the morning and, and get dressed and just do life right now because this has happened. But the difference for me is the fact that I know that I have a Heavenly Father who loves me. And I know that I have a Savior that walks beside me, and His grace is going to carry me through. This is all part of His plan. And He's going to take care of me, and He's going to take care of my family, and He's going to bring us out of this valley back up to the mountaintop. And being able to allow yourself to be vulnerable and be transparent in that way, that's a big thing.
Yeah. So as you, instead of doing that kind of arm's length, again, the 2 or 4 versus with, and I think that's really what you're saying is that transition from not just serving a pizza or showing a movie, but with is now let's get to know each other. Let's go out for coffee. Let's go out for breakfast or lunch, and let's share life and vulnerability and opening up and risk. What is it you need God for in those moments then?
I need His strength. I need His wisdom. I think we all need that every day, but particularly in those situations, the wisdom to discern my words, the wisdom to discern the own intentions of my heart, and be willing to surrender every day, every part of my life. That means my marriage, that means my children, whatever He needs to use to make this happen, being able to be sold out every day. Because we're not talking about, the 9 to 5 in this building, sitting behind a desk, looking at this computer. We're talking about Saturday night, and that's a whole different thing. I think that's the big thing.
So this isn't really just simply about doing. It really starts with being before you do.
Absolutely.
And it's that transformation and that spiritual growth and what does Jesus need to do in me first before I think about what does Jesus want to do through me.
Right, exactly. And I think that one naturally leads into the other. Going back to what we said in the very beginning, it's very obvious if your intentions are not right. It's very obvious if your own heart's not right. People can see that. You can't fake it. And I think that a lot of times, those of us that are in the church, we're really good at that. Oh, I can put on the face. I can put on the show. You probably can't. There's a very good chance that your heart is very obvious to everybody around you. And so you've got to make sure that you're right, that your heart's right with God before you can let him use you.
Yeah. Awesome. So kind of in closing, for those who are watching or going to be watching this later as a resource, what encouragement would you give to a pastor, a church worker, a member of another ministry who are watching this webinar tonight and they're thinking, boy, we'd really like to connect with our neighborhood. We'd really like to be that blessing, but we don't know where to begin or we're afraid. What encouragement could you give?
What I would say initially is, it's not going to sound like encouragement, but let me explain. What I would say is, you're going to fail. You're gonna have stumbling blocks. There's going to be things that come up. Don't be afraid of them. Don't allow Satan to use your failures as your demise. Allow Christ to pick you up and put the ministry back together, because if you rely on yourself, you're going to fail time and time and time again. But if you allow the Lord to really take your ministry and use it for his glory, for his purpose, it's gonna fly. It's gonna soar. And so don't be afraid to fail, because the refiner's fire hurts. It's not pleasant, and it was never meant to be pleasant. It requires trust, and it requires a lot of faith. But stick with it. You're playing the long game. This isn't something that's going to happen in 2 weeks. It's not something that's going to happen in 2 months. It's not something that's going to happen in 2 years. You're really playing the long game, and it's going to look different, and you're going to have different plays all along the way. But in the end, if you hear "well done, good and faithful servant," then you played the long game, and I think that's what we're all trying to achieve here.
Yeah. So it's taking it and seeing it and reframing it from failure to, hey, there's a learning opportunity. We learned what doesn't work, and now what can. You think about the disciples. Before they were Peter and Paul, and James and John, they were sinful, bumbling idiots. I always think of like the Three Stooges for like 3 years. Right. And yet, though, it was in the process of Jesus being with them and them growing and learning and him molding them and preparing them for what they would be in him. But sometimes that journey isn't always a pretty one to get there.
No, it's not at all. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Becky, thank you so much. Now, just one last question for you here tonight. How can we be praying for you personally and your ministry at Redeemer in the weeks and months to come?
I've kind of shared where we're going. So just, if you could just pray that as leadership as a whole, not just me, but, as leadership and as staff, that we would have the courage and the wisdom to empower our people, to help them catch this vision and help them really, to get on board, and that we would be guarded as leaders from whatever Satan would throw at us, that we could remain, in leadership, and that we could keep our integrity and be wise in our words and our discernment in how we move forward in this ministry.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, we definitely want to encourage everybody. Please keep Becky and Redeemer Lutheran in your prayers, especially I know that you're in a call process right now for an associate pastor.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Yeah. So definitely some discernment and wisdom for that process as well. But Becky, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how could they reach out to you there at Redeemer?
So my email here is bwade@redeemerrick.org. Or if you go to our Facebook page, which is Redeemer Lutheran Richmond, it's right there. Our website is redeemerric.org. My contact information is right there. I have a personal Facebook page. My name's Becky Wade. My face is right there. Just, shoot me a message. And we actually have a Facebook page just for community engagement. It's Redeemer Community Engagement. So, that's another way to get in touch. And, I'm willing to talk or answer questions as best that I can, or brainstorm, or, whatever.
Awesome. Well, Becky, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Travis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear your story and all that God is doing in and through your ministry there at Redeemer as you seek to connect and with your neighbors, to love and serve them, to connect them to Jesus. And I want to thank all of you for joining us for this February edition of the Jesus Central webinar. If you have any questions about iNeighborhood, any ways that I can partner with you to be a blessing and serve you as you seek to be a blessing to your neighbors and connect people to Jesus, please let me know. You can reach out to me at tguzzi at se.lcms.org. That's tguzzi at se.lcms.org. Thanks for joining us. And as always, remember to keep Jesus central. God's blessings, and see you next time.